now there's an article up on ESPN.com that asks, what's at stake for the quarterbacks in the NFC East? Here's Eagles reporter Tim McManus's insight. Says Jalen Hurts wants to be like Mike, a spokesman for the Jordan brand. Hurts spent time with Michael Jordan this offseason, suggested he sought Jordan's advice on what it takes to repeat as champions. Here's what Jalen had to say on that topic.
Competitive as he is, it'd be unwise of me not to seek knowledge from him and lean on someone like that. And so that's something that I value a lot. The biggest thing is just taking it a day at a time. We have these goals and you have these big dreams of what you want to accomplish, but ultimately it's a journey.
All right, EJ, obviously Jalen Hurts is a guy we often hear saying all the right things. What is at stake for him? I mean, he cashes in with the Super Bowl championship last year. So looking forward, starting with this year, what is at stake for Jalen Hurts?
Well, Graz, the biggest thing that's at stake now is consistent greatness. And I love this from Jalen Hurts. And if I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, I love it even more because when most guys win a Super Bowl or most guys win Super Bowl MVP, they go into the offseason and they relax and they go to the beach and they go on amazing trips, which maybe he did. But you see him actually trying to get more excellence. And when you spend time with somebody like Michael Jordan, who is, I think, one of the best of all time in any sport, especially in our generation, I mean, you can see that he's seeking more and more greatness to keep this thing going. So now when you think about the great quarterbacks, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, who's still currently playing, Drew Brees, all those guys were linked to winning Super Bowls. And Jalen's already done that now, just going into his 6th season. So I think the sky's the limit for this young man, and he gets it. Again, he's always going to say the right things, but also he's doing the right things when nobody's watching, and that's why he's having the excellence that he's having so young in his career.
Yeah, Graz, you know what's interesting to me? We talk in the draft process, the tape sets the floor and the character sets the ceiling. He came out, he threw 52% completion as a rookie. That's up to 68%. How can you not love this guy and keep rooting for him? He's obviously working at his skill set. There was a reason he was the 53rd player picked. He didn't even start full-time in college, and now he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. It's a great lesson for a lot of young players, like work at your skill, you can get better. And again, it's hard not to root for him.
Yeah, since he's been in the league, he's been a guy that has consistently been thirsty for what do I need to work on, and then actually putting that into practice. So when you look at his career as a whole, as it begins to take shape, what can he ultimately become?
Canton. One word. Canton. That's what can happen if he continues on this trajectory. I don't think he's ever going to get in the upper echelon of NFL quarterbacks with Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and of course, Patrick Mahomes. But he doesn't have to. He can be one of the great winners of his era. Watch the Super Bowl when everybody was saying Kansas City's blitzes were going to dictate the entire game. Well, they did, because when Kansas City sent guys, Jalen Hurts went deep and completed 4 chunk plays against a ferocious Kansas City defense because he knows when it's winning time. That's what's special about him. He is not the best player on the Eagles, but he's what the Eagles need to win. The tush-push is obviously automatic. He's a huge part of that. I'm just so blown away. Mike, you mentioned he did not start full-time at Alabama. He lost a competition, had to go to Oklahoma. To get to where he is now is special. It's a Hall of Fame journey. If he wins at this clip, obviously he's getting a gold jacket.
You know what's interesting? At first, it's like Hall of Fame, I'm not sure, but he turns 27 in August, so he's right now in the prime of his career, surrounded by a great group of skilled players. It's not out of the question. I mean, a couple of years ago, we'd be like, are you crazy? But look, he's a Super Bowl winner in the prime of his career.
If he wins 2 and is at this level of contribution, I think it would happen.
Certainly in a great spot. EJ?
Well, I wanted to add, I mean, Mike, you mentioned in the prime of his career, most quarterbacks, especially if they're starters for a long time, they hit their prime around 29, 30, 31. Yep. So really, Hurts isn't even at that point yet. Again, he's going into his 6th season, guys, and he's already been to 2 Super Bowls. So I understand he hasn't won MVP. He did win MVP of the Super Bowl. But I think, again, he's going to continue to sky and get better and get better. Now, the other part that we need to mention, he's had a different play caller quite often throughout his career. And one that tells me, obviously, he can learn offenses fast and he can adjust. He can move forward, but they got a new OC this year. Kellen Moore is now the head coach for the New Orleans Saints, so that's going to be another area where as long as they can keep the verbiage the same, not just for Jalen, but also the 10 guys around him, he's still going to have success, but I'm excited for him.
Exciting to think about what's possible for Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. But sticking in the NFC East, that same article that we were referring to earlier, our Giants reporter, Jordan Raanan, made his pick for NFC East champ. He says, since everyone is down on the Cowboys this season, it only makes sense they surprise and win the division. There's still some high-end talent on that roster, and Dallas was good for at least 12 wins each of the previous 3 years that Prescott played double-digit games. To count the Cowboys out with Prescott potentially having the best weapons of his career seems silly. They will surprise. So Jordan helping out the show.
Yeah,
in the summer.
thank you, Jordan.
What do you think, Kevin? Do you agree with him?
What I think is that Jordan knows content. That's what I
right.
think, okay? No, the Dallas Cowboys are the third best team in the NFC East, and even though they're closer to Washington than they are New York, who I think is going to be the fourth best team in that division, I don't think there's much of a pathway unless something catastrophic happens with the first two teams of that division. There is a massive talent gap with the Eagles. We saw that the last few years. I just think that when you go 1 through 53, the Eagles have the best roster in football. I don't see the edges where Dallas is going to be able to close that gap. I don't see a coaching edge. I don't see a GM edge. I don't see a defensive edge. It's just not going to happen this year for the Cowboys. I think Brian Schottenheimer is going to surprise some people, but not to anything better than third place in that division.
Yeah, and I love the fact that Kevin Clark is saying that somebody knows content. I mean, it'd be like someone comparing Cam Ward to Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying.
We got to get through the offseason somehow, man. Me and Jordan are carrying us. We got back pain from having to come up with all these takes.
But what about the Cowboys this year?
In all seriousness, Dan, you made a good point a couple weeks ago. When you evaluate teams' improvement year to year, you have to look at who's coming back from IR. And when you think about Dallas with Dak Prescott, a really good corner in Trayvon Diggs, to be an underrated linebacker, DeMarion Overshown, they're going to be an improved team. I'm a huge fan of Brian Schottenheimer.
Yeah.
He obviously got the job, guys, because Dak Prescott felt good about him. So if they're healthy, they're greatly improved. But much like the way Kevin Clark thinks that Cam Ward's going to be Patrick Mahomes, Jordan Rondon, there's no way they're better than third.
No.
They're improved, but those other two teams are massively better.
And I understand you have backups, Cooper Rush and all that kind of stuff, but Dak is their guy. He's been their guy for now going on 10 seasons. So when you think back to the 23 year, he had an amazing year, threw for well over 3,500 yards, a bunch of touchdowns, and sure, they still came up short in the playoff race, but as long as he's healthy, guys, that's the biggest thing. When Dak is healthy, when he plays 10-plus games, the Cowboys win 10-plus games. They're a contender when they get to the playoffs. So I understand there's slander toward the Cowboys all the time. They're America's team because people love to hate them. But I'll tell you what, if Dak can just stay healthy, and then you add a George Pickens who can be a 1A type of receiver with CeeDee Lamb, who can also get you 1,000 yards receiving, I'm expecting big things from Dallas, and it starts with QB1 and Dak Prescott.
Something weird always happens in the NFC East. 21 years since they've had a repeat champion. It's time for a game of Are You Convinced? With our football crew. Mike T, are you convinced that Aaron Rodgers will lead Pittsburgh to its first playoff win since the 2016 season?
No, I'm more convinced that Wendy's in the cafeteria right now.
No idea where Wendy is.
Because he's going to be 42 in December, no off-season program, and best case scenario, Graz, they are the third best offense in their division when you think about, all the other firepower in the AFC North. I give them a lot of credit for coming back one more time. I just don't see this working by the end of the season.
How many teams can we rank third in their division on this show? Let's just keep it going. No, I completely agree with you, Mike. I just don't see a pathway for them to get a playoff win. I think as long as Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers get on the same page about merging the offense, it can work. They can win double-digit games. I just don't see in a stacked AFC them winning a game.
DJ, what do you think about the Steelers and Rodgers?
Yeah, I think it's too early to be convinced right now, so I'll say no. But I will say and warn us that, look, they got a really good defense. They got a defense that's ready to win playoff games if they're able to get there. You got to win out in that division. Some tough ones with Baltimore. Bengals as well, going to be really good. So I'd say no right now.
All right, next one's for Kevin Clark. Jordan Love and the Packers are Super Bowl contenders. Are you convinced?
I picked them to make the Super Bowl last year, so let's run it back. No, I don't think they're going to make the Super Bowl this year. I think the NFC is just too stacked. But yes, they're a cornerback room away. That's why I think the Jair Alexander trade or move was so significant, getting him off the roster, because they need talent there. But if they get that, if they have some pop there, they can make the Super Bowl.
EJ, what do you think?
I'll say yes, and if you look at the history of the starting quarterbacks for the Packers, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, and now Jordan Love, Rodgers and Favre make huge jumps in their third year as the full-time starter. And what is this year for Jordan Love? His third year as a full-time starter. So I'll say yes. They did a good job in the draft as well, getting him some more firepower at receiver, Matthew Golden, Savion Williams. So I'll say yes, they can make it to a Super Bowl and win.
All right, last one is for you, EJ. Are you convinced that Justin Fields is the answer at quarterback this year and beyond for the New York Jets?
Yes, Y-E-S, absolutely, guys. Look, I think Justin is at a point where he's tired of people hating on him. He's tired of people doubting him. And also, you got a new head coach in Aaron Glenn who's going to have a vested interest to make sure that Justin Fields has success. They're going to create the offense around him. They're going to let him be him and not try to just put him in this mold of other quarterbacks. I say yes, they're going to get it right there in New York with Justin Fields at QB.
EJ, I agree for very similar reasons. I think with Aaron Glenn, you're going to see 3 objective indices of improvement. You're going to see penalties down, you're going to see turnovers down, and you're going to see 2-minute scoring at the end of each half improve. This team will be dramatically better coached. Justin Fields will be the beneficiary of that.
AFC edition of a segment we call Super Bowl or Bust. Kevin Clark, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens will win the Super Bowl if
they show up to the game. They're going to win the Super Bowl this year. What's a little Super Bowl prediction on June 27th? Let's just go for it here, guys. They are deep. They are ready. My X factor here is Malachi Starks, their first-round defensive back out of Georgia. He's going to free up Kyle Hamilton to be one of the best players in football. They win this year.
Yeah, the Ravens in the playoffs. What could go wrong? Absolutely. Mike Tannenbaum staying in the AFC North. Joe Burrow and the Bengals will win the Super Bowl if
their 2 pass rushers are taken care of contractually. Trey Hendrickson is under contract, but disgruntled. Shamar Stewart probably is not under contract as a first-round pick. Trey Hendrickson, guys, as you know, most productive pass rusher over the last 2 years, 35 sacks. We know they're going to score a ton of points. They need, as Bill Walsh would say, fourth-quarter pass rushers. Hopefully those situations get solved.
Finally, EJ Manuel, Josh Allen and the Bills fell 1 game short of a Super Bowl appearance last season. The Bills will win it all this year if.
Oh, fellas, this is the year. There's no if, so the Bills are going to win a Super Bowl, and a lot of it's going to be on Josh Allen to have an MVP-like season, but also you got to sign James Cook. I think he's a huge catalyst to this offense. I think he gives Josh a great extension when things break down. If he can't take off a run, you get him the ball out in the flat. He can get you 10, 15 yards. And also the defense revamp. Bosa, Shaq Thompson, those guys are going to help on the defensive side as well. Bills win it.
How come Mike T didn't have a Super Bowl prediction tonight?
EJ
picked, I picked.
We got a Ravens pick, we got a Bills pick, we got somewhere Patrick Mahomes is laughing at all of us. Despite Josh Allen taking home the MVP award in 2024, he believes his resume still has a hole in it as we enter the season. Listen to Josh.
It is such a great honor, and I do appreciate being honored for my work. But at the same time, still didn't win a Super Bowl, didn't win a ring, and that is the only goal. It's the only focus that I've ever had going into this league.
EJ, is Josh Allen under the most pressure of any quarterback to win a Super Bowl this year?
Yeah, guys, he is. I mean, now that you've had the personal accolade of winning the MVP, and that city, man, that's the expectation. Now, look, the cities in Bills Mafia is going to always be behind Josh Allen, but at the same time, they are salivating for a Super Bowl opportunity, and I know Josh wants to deliver that to the Buffalo Nation. And so, yeah, you win the MVP. You got some extra pieces, like I mentioned, on defense. Your offensive line is back. If they can get James Cook back under contract, all things look up for Josh Allen. But again, he has to stay healthy, and we know Josh is going to play smash mouth football. So I think that's something he has to keep in mind as well. That, hey, man, you got to keep your shoulders, your knees, your ankles. Don't take those extra hits if you don't have to, especially at this point in your career. We know that you're tough. We know that you're going to go get it. We know that you're going to sacrifice your body, but your best ability is now availability for this Buffalo team. So the pressure's going to be mounting, and he's ready for it. Coach McDermott's going to make sure they have supporting cast for Josh to continue to have success.
Mike T, all these great quarterbacks in the AFC that Mahomes has been standing in the way of: Allen, Lamar, Burrow. Which of those do you trust the most to finally get past Mahomes and get to the Super Bowl?
Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills guys, because of their style of play. Coach Belichick talks a lot about oftentimes in the NFL, teams lose games before you ever have to win them. Last year, Josh Allen was sacked 14 times and only had 6 interceptions. The way they could run the ball, as EJ mentioned, with James Cook, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, they are a hard team to beat because they don't have self-inflicted wounds. I think they'll continue to get better on the outside with Keon Coleman and another year of development. But this is a team, to me, a very, very high floor because they don't self-destruct.
I was in Kansas City for the AFC Championship game. Never seen a locker room more crushed than the Bills were that night. They thought they had it. Like, they believe they're doing every single thing right. You agree with Mike T that Allen's the guy?
No, I don't. That's why I'm picking the Ravens to win the Super Bowl this year. But Mahomes, you mentioned, listen, he crushes dreams.
Yes.
He leaves locker rooms in tatters. That's what happens when you're playing with a Michael Jordan-like figure, is he dictates your legacy. He leaves you ringless in some situations. I think Josh Allen will get a ring. I think Lamar Jackson will get a ring. But there will be guys in this era who will say at their induction ceremony in Canton, I wish Patrick Mahomes was never born, which is the best compliment that you can give a quarterback. That's what happens when you play with Patrick Mahomes in his era.
EJ, the Bills, they're off season. They re-sign all their core guys. They add, Joey Bosa. He replaces Von Miller. But basically, they believe they're doing everything the right way. Is that the right approach? Just keep chipping away, and one of these years it'll work out for them?
Yeah, well, Graz, I think the other part, and you mentioned Bosa, I mean, they re-signed Greg Rousseau as well, who was a draft pick there a few years ago. So you can tell that the Bills are trying to shore up their front seven. And then if somebody wants to take a page out of the, most recent Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles, you got to have a deep front seven to get after some of these quarterbacks. And who are we talking about? We're talking about Joe Burrow. We're talking about Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. You have to have a front seven and pass rushers that can affect him. So again, as much pressure that'll be on Josh Allen as a quarterback, I think a lot of the pressure is going to be on that defense to make sure you lock down some of these great offenses you're going to play against. And the other cool part for the Bills, a lot of their toughest matchups are at home. And we've seen how big of a difference that makes when they're at home. It's late in the season. It's cold. It's nighttime. They get those primetime games. So that's going to help the Bills a lot. But I'm expecting some big things from this front seven, especially those guys that just got paid.
Buffalo has one game this season that's not in the Eastern time zone. The schedule is set up. They look like they're loaded. One of these years, they really believe they will do it. We'll see if it's this year. Time now to look at EJ's manual. See what we did there? EJ, how does Dak Prescott lead the Cowboys back to the top of the NFC East?
Well, guys, it's two things. For one, you got to win your divisional matchups. So you got to beat Washington. You got to beat Philly. You got to beat the New York Giants. Anytime they come to Dallas, you have to own your home field, and then maybe you can steal some victories on the road. I think the second part, guys, is making sure you protect the football. When I look at Dak Prescott and the best seasons he's had is when he's limiting the interceptions. So, of course, it's staying healthy, all the things that you naturally have to do as a player in the NFL. But I think the big key for him in this year, don't get crazy with the interceptions. As long as you protect the ball, let your defense get you some wins too.
What do you think?
I think the best path is for Jerry Jones to petition the NFL to join a new division. That would be the best way, because there's a bunch of them where they could compete, and it's just not going to happen in the NFC East. I just feel like there's no way they can overcome the talent gap, the coaching gap, the GMing gap with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think that the Commanders are in front of them. So no, I don't see much of a path here. They're going to be a very healthy, very strong third best in the division. Congratulations.
I think the key is actually the running game. If they could get enough out of Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, which I'm not sure they can, but what does Brian Schottenheimer want to do? He wants to run the ball, play action, and I think that really plays well with Dak. So I'm bullish long-term on how they want to approach and eventually win. But I think short-term, I agree with Kevin. I just don't know if they have enough there.
EJ, they're getting a bunch of guys back healthy that finished the year on IR. But the biggest one is the quarterback, Dak Prescott. I mean, is anybody making a bigger impact addition this offseason than that?
Well, not really. I mean, look, you bring back Diggs back on the defensive side, and then you bring back some edge rushers as well for the Cowboys to go opposite of Micah Parsons. So I think, of course, you got to get Micah Parsons signed as well. But I think for Dak, man, staying healthy and protecting the football. And as a quarterback, those are the things that you can control. Now, of course, injuries happen, but I said this earlier in the show, when Dak is available and he plays 10-plus games, the Cowboys win 10-plus games. And look, I hear what Kevin's saying as far as the division getting better. Philly certainly much better. Washington's going to be better because of what we saw with Jaden Daniels. But we also didn't see a lot of Dak Prescott last year. So, again, if he could play 12, 13 games where he's available, maybe they have a chance to win the division.
Hey, EJ, just the GM and me, is it okay for $60 million to ask him to play in all 17? Is that,
Whoa!
Okay. That's how it's going to go. We're going to.
Whoa, Mike T, all I'm saying is, now we know injuries happen, right? Whether it's an ankle, I'm not saying he's going to be having load management, but I'm just talking about 100% injury rate of sports. So, yeah, of course, you want him out there on the football field, but look at the past 5-6 seasons, he's missed time. So if he can limit that, kind of going with the same rate of what he's had the past couple of years, then I think they stand a chance. But if they don't, then, Joe Milton, not so sure. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes with Dak. We want to turn the page now to Chapter 2 of EJ's manual this morning. EJ, what does Aaron Rodgers need to do to have a big year in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, well, the big thing is feeding DK Metcalf. So they go out and get DK Metcalf in free agency, and really, this was, in a trade. And I think this was interesting because you didn't have the quarterback yet. You had some, I think you had the guy that came over back from Tennessee, but now you signed Aaron Rodgers. So I think you got to give DK Metcalf at least 10 to 12 targets a game. And I know that's a lot of volume, man, but I think he has to be your bell cow. And I would say the same what I said with Dak Prescott for Aaron Rodgers. Protect the football. If you can run the football up there in that weather, you have a playoff-ready defense. Let those guys get you some turnovers, create some short fields. Don't press the issue, especially early in the season, because he didn't get a full offseason with this offense. So for A-Rod, feed DK Metcalf, also take care of the Rod.
DK Metcalf has not been a high-volume wide receiver in his career. Is that? I mean, are they in good shape there, or do they need more?
They're going to need a second guy to step up. But if he's going to have a big year, Arthur Smith's going to have to call his old colleague Matt LaFleur and say, what did you do in Green Bay to merge your offensive philosophy with Aaron Rodgers? That's the key. Aaron Rodgers has to fight his own worst instincts and say, hey, let me do everything on offense. Remember, this time last year he was running Nathaniel Hackett's offense, which is the Aaron Rodgers offense. We saw how poorly that went. So don't do that. In fact, Aaron Rodgers, do everything the opposite of what you were doing this time last year. That's my advice to you. But no, I think that there's a way to make the Arthur Smith offense with play action, turning him back to the defense, quick strikes over the middle, merge that with the Aaron Rodgers tendencies, get comfortable with motions and shifts, Aaron. There can be a middle ground here, and there can be some wins.
Yeah, I think a couple of things are key here. First of all, their tackle play. Broderick Jones and Troy Fontenot have to be healthy and more productive because, again, we're closing in on 42 for Aaron Rodgers. But I actually do think, Kevin, from a scheme standpoint, really what they want to do is run the ball, play action, and boot. Caleb Johnson, a third-round pick out of Iowa, who I thought was really productive.
Runs hard.
Yeah, he's really a good fit for this offense. If they could get him going early, I think DK Metcalf, obviously, as you mentioned, more of a home run hitter than a volume guy, but the play action, the boot, the rollouts, it could all work provided the offensive line plays well, and Caleb Johnson, who I believe in, can get off to a great start.
EJ, you want to back in on this?
Yeah, I wanted to add, look, I think now that DK's with the Steelers, and you mentioned the offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, DK wants to be a volume guy. Maybe the offense in Seattle didn't call for him to do that, so now you get this opportunity where you can really unleash this weapon. But the other part, and you guys mentioned the age, it's a great point. When you looked at Peyton Manning late in his career, when you look at Tom Brady late in their career, they weren't necessarily doing a whole bunch of – granted, they threw the ball, don't get me wrong, but you still saw a great level of play action use. You saw a great level of allowing the defense to get you some short yardage fields. And even when Tom Brady won his last Super Bowl, that was because partly of the defense that played so well there at Tampa Bay. So I think there's other ways to still find ways to win games with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback.
All right, one last one in EJ's manual this morning. We go to Cleveland. How does Shedeur Sanders win the Browns' starting quarterback job?
Yeah, well, look, the big key first is owning that locker room. You have to walk in there not with the confidence in the sense of a bravado or arrogance, but you have to make sure these guys see you putting in the work. And everything I've read from the #1 pick in Cam Ward, he's showing up at 5:30 in the morning. So he's earning that respect. Shedeur, you have to do the same exact thing. Go in there, don't do a lot of talking. Just make sure your teammates see you working. And look, Cleveland needs something at quarterback. I don't know if it's going to be Kenny Pickett. I don't know who it's going to be, but I think for Shedeur Sanders, do all the right things on and off the field, and you have your opportunities in training camp to win the job.
When you're the starting quarterback of a $6-7 billion enterprise, everything you do is magnified, good or bad. He has the most ability, in my opinion, in that room. He has a chance to earn that job, but it really has to stack one good day on top of the next. I think he's a much better prospect as a player than Dillon Gabriel.
First of all, I showed up at 5:30 this morning. There's no buzz about my leadership. I didn't hear anything about that.
Well, we got to see you do it again.
Okay, every day, just every day. Next week, I'll see you there. First in, last out. So with anything involving the Cleveland Browns quarterback position and the line of succession, there's only one key: wait. Because everybody in front of you is going to eventually flop. We have a lot of data on this, okay? We have a couple of decades worth, all right, since they moved back to Cleveland. So if I'm Shedeur Sanders, I'm looking at Dillon Gabriel. You're already better than him from a football standpoint. You're going to be better than him on the practice field starting in Brea, Ohio in a couple weeks for training camp. Kenny Pickett, I think he can be beaten out at some point by halfway through that season. And then Joe Flacco is Joe Flacco, and they're going to want to move to a younger quarterback. So I'm looking at Shedeur Sanders just staying in the fight, waiting his turn, driving the speed limit, and by the back half of the season, there will be an opportunity for him. Just stay in the fight and compete.
One thing we know for sure, the only constant with the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation throughout the years has been change. You have something you wanted to say?
I had a question. Did he get here at 5:30 by speeding? Like, just curious. Like,
We're gonna dive into that on a Saturday show, which we don't have time.